This is a picture of my family. That's me on the left. That's my mom and dad. That's my sister Jenny to the right. And in the middle, my brother Bradley. Brad was the kind of guy who, whenever you hung around him, he gave you perspective in life. Here was a kid who couldn't do most of the things that normal kids can do in high school. You know, he couldn't drive, he couldn't go out on a Friday night by himself. He always had to have somebody with him.
You know, we learned that Brad would be disabled sometime around 3 months. He was the youngest of 3 kids, and at about 3 months it became evident that he seemed to have some developmental delays, really low muscle tone. He had a hard time holding his head up and his neck.
It was really the start of a long journey of going to various doctors and really trying to seek exactly why Brad was the way he was and how it would affect the rest of his life and how it might affect the rest of the family.
We went to numerous specialists for various symptoms that he had, and it wasn't until he was about 7 that we decided to have a second look by a geneticist at just his overall development. And we were referred over to Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, where we saw Dr. Richard Bowles, and he, after a real extensive evaluation and exam, was able to make a pretty good diagnosis of a mitochondrial disorder for Brad.
Mitochondrial disease is a very large area of medicine. The mitochondria are the parts of the cell that make the energy. Since all cells need energy, all biological processes essentially need energy, the mitochondria are involved in just about everything in health and disease. Without enough energy, the cells can't do what they need to do. So mitochondrial disease can be associated with disease of the brain, of the muscles, of the liver, kidneys, bone marrow, just about any part of the body that you name can be part of mitochondrial disease. However, those cells and tissues that require the most energy are the most affected by mitochondrial disease. So that would be nerve, particularly in the brain, but also nerves in the rest of the body, since nerve is electrical and it requires a lot of energy, but also muscle. Muscle requires power.
On a daily basis, certainly Brad, with all his medical challenges, did suffer. He had difficulty ambulating and getting around with his neuromuscular weakness. He had these Coke bottle glasses just to see where he was going. He couldn't express himself and verbalize the pain or discomforts that he was experiencing. Family also, saw his suffering and sacrificed, although I'm sure they saw it as a labor of love, like any parent would.
Describing the symptoms of mitochondrial disease is very difficult because all cells need energy and all biological processes need energy. So the short answer to the question, what are the symptoms of mitochondrial disease, is everything.
Well, as Brad got older, the mito, it just seemed to kick in, and we just started seeing a decline, just overall decline developmentally. His energy level was just a lot less. Just real simple tasks in life. It was just harder to get from point A to point B, and his muscles began to atrophy even more than what they had been, and his balance was off.
And he became more deconditioned as he got older. He developed a lot of neurological conditions, a condition called pseudotumor cerebri, which causes significant pressure on the brain. And he had several operations to have shunts placed in his lower back and his brain. That put a lot of physical strain on his body.
Sometimes mitochondrial disease can cause very severe brain problems, including mental retardation, autism, and seizure disorders.
Seizure, yeah.
You're having one, aren't you?
Yeah.
Did you fall down?
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Okay, I also
Make sure his head's okay.
Okay, I need to call 911.
Okay.
Okay, you got him?
The seizures were the scariest thing. And as they progressed and became more intense in nature, we would just sit there just in tears as they racked his body, and it would take him so long to recover from them.
Just a little bit so we can get us.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. That's okay, Brad.
It actually doesn't sound like he has saliva in the back of his throat. It sounds okay.
Not yet. Although,
He's okay.
He fell one night in the middle of a seizure by the side of his bed and fractured his leg, and then was in a cast for 6 weeks.
He would cease breathing during seizures and his face would become dark blue, dark black, and he wouldn't breathe for a couple seconds, which always seemed like forever. And he would be in almost like a catatonic state when he came out of them.
Hi, dude.
Maybrook?
You're okay.
You're doing okay, big guy.
And he would be so wiped out afterwards, and quite often we had to send him to the hospital. We had the paramedics over on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, they're friends now.
We've been here a few times for Brad, and he had many grand mal seizures, and it was a little difficult sometimes.
One thing that we did notice is that the family's a really tight-knit family. We cared for him, obviously, and we were always here, and we always appreciated how much you guys took care of Brad. It was nice to see that because we don't always see that when we come to houses.
One of the biggest challenges, I think, especially as Brad got older and had more medical problems where it required him to spend extended periods of time in the hospital, was that somebody from our family would always need to be with him. So either my mom and dad would usually stay with him at the hospital during the day, and then my brother or myself would stay with him at night, and we would have what are called hospital slumber parties. And usually Brad was miserable because he had a headache, he couldn't eat, he couldn't drink, he had just had a major spine surgery. But anytime we talked about a hospital slumber party, it was a big deal. And so he knew that as soon as he got to his room, as soon as my mom and dad left, both my brother and I, we would sneak down and buy him a Diet Coke. Brad had an unhealthy addiction to Diet Coke. He was allowed 3 Diet Cokes a day. And he would wake up in the morning and he would put his number of Diet Cokes, he would write it on the refrigerator door on the whiteboard. And then every time he would have one, he would go up and wipe it off the board. And Brad just lived we could get Brad to do anything for a Diet Coke. So he had an extra Diet Coke that night. And then we would just hang out and watch TV, and it just, to us, it just seemed like such a terrible thing to have to see somebody go through. But he loved every minute of it because it was a hospital slumber party.
Brad's passing was extremely sudden and extremely difficult. It was August 24th, 2011, and the night before we had put Brad to bed just as normal. Next morning I went to work, and Barb went into the room to wake him up for school, and he had passed. And I'll till the day I die, I'll remember the phone call. So my cell phone rang at work, and it was Barb, and she was just saying, he's gone, and just, it was like somebody had stabbed me in the heart and ripped it out.
When Brad died, one of the hardest thing was not being able to say goodbye. The hardest thing was not to be able to tell him that I love him, to tell him that he was the best brother a guy can wish for. It broke my heart to not have been able to say I love you one last time.
Brad taught me the value of human life. It's easy to get wrapped up in our own lives and job and work and all that stuff, but anytime you looked at Brad and you saw the challenges that he faced physically and cognitively, and just all of the obstacles in his path, just to see how he loved life.
Brad was not defined by his disease. When he came to the office, he certainly lit up the room with his broad smile. He had kind of quirky mannerisms and movements and comments that certainly made us laugh. And he always had this insatiable thirst and craving for Diet Cokes. But he certainly is a blessing. The relationship that we've developed over the years is going to transcend his death.
You would think, here's a kid who is being held back, who isn't living a flourishing life. But that just wasn't the case. And he broke down all stereotypes and he showed me that the boundaries of human well-being and human flourishing are not confined to physical functioning.
know what? He taught me so much. It's funny because when he was born and I realized that we did not have a typically developing child and we would have a very, very different life than we originally thought we would have, really turned into the best blessing I think I could ever have. He totally changed our family. He changed our lives.
My hope is that nobody else ever has to sit and talk about their dead, their deceased relative who died of a terrible, terrible disease. I want people to become familiar with this disorder like they are with breast cancer or they are with other common disorders. I want it to be a disorder that's recognized and can be diagnosed easier. It took 5 years for myself actually to be diagnosed with a mitochondrial disorder.
We still have, our daughter Jenny has it, and my niece and nephew still have it. And it's just an insidious disease that we are committed to raising as much money and awareness.
There is no cure for mitochondrial disease, and symptoms last a lifetime. The treatments are suboptimal, and I really hope that we have more research to get better treatments. But the treatments that we do have can make a great deal, and it does make a tremendous difference to make a diagnosis of mitochondrial disease on a patient today.
There's a lack of doctors that are familiar with the disease, that know how to treat it, that know how to diagnose it.
There's really only a small number of us who specialize in mitochondrial medicine, and we all have very long waiting lists.
We want to see more medical professionals going into this area so that more people can be helped and treated more effectively.